बाबा जी शुरू कर लीजिए फिर।
ठीक है।
कौन आगे? हाँ वो तो इसको किया था।
A very good morning to everybody, to all the esteemed officers and colleagues who are present now in the conference hall, and all the officers and colleagues who are joined through the web link. We are on day 5 and the concluding session of this iconic week, which we've been celebrating since 7th March, this Monday. And we are privileged to have today with us Dr. Vaibhav Chaturvedi, who is a fellow at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, CEEW, to present on the future of India's energy systems under a net zero future. A bit about Dr. Vaibhav Chaturvedi, who, as I said, is a fellow at the CEEW, which is one of Asia's leading think tanks in the climate space and leads CEEW's low carbon pathways research. His expertise is on modeling long-term futures for energy and emissions. His role focuses on developing a modeling ecosystem in India and informing national and state level energy and climate policy. He has published extensively in top journals of energy and climate policy and is currently the review editor of IPCC AR6 WG3 Chapter 3. That would be the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Assessment Report 6, Working Group 3. And he is the co-chair of the Mitigation Working Group of the Independent Global Stocktake Process, known as IGST, and a member of the Advisory Editorial Board of Journals Energy Policy and Energy and Climate Change. And he has been part of the various, and is also part of the various Government of India committees and groups on India's energy and climate policy. His recent work includes modeling for informing India's net zero target and sectoral strategies, and modeling state level energy and emission scenarios for India, among other things. We are very happy to have you here today, Dr. Vaibhav Chaturvedi. And our Secretary Sir would be joining in a while, he's on the way. And in the meantime, I would like to formally welcome you and request our Joint Secretary, Ma'am Smita Tej, to welcome you with a plant.
Our contribution towards net zero.
This is our signature welcome now.
It is very nice.
Let us put our hands together.
Oh, you want city fan?
Yeah. Yeah.
Over to you, Dr. Chaturvedi.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Quatra. Very good morning to all the colleagues here. Thank you, first of all, the Ministry of Coal for inviting me for this very important, interesting discussion in this very important week, Azadi Amrit Mahotsav. I will talk about India's net zero future. जैसे आप लोगों को पता होगा, जो Prime Minister announced 2070 as the goal. We did a lot of work before this announcement was made to inform this particular choice. Of course, many other organizations have been doing, but this analysis जो आज मैं present करने वाला हूँ, this is the only analysis in India which is actually looked at post 2050 scenario. तो इसके अलावा जितने भी analysis हुई हैं सब 2050 तक ही हैं, and this is the only analysis that gives alternative options 2050, 60, 70, 80, or on the basis of looking at all of these different dates, possible dates. फिर उसके बाद we do a lot of other analysis to say, okay, why should we choose 2060 and not 2050 and not 2060? So that is the kind of analysis I will present today. A bit about my organization. CW is among Asia's leading policy research institutions, and we work across many different areas of work. So आप जो screen पे देख रहे हैं, जैसे energy access हो गया, which is a very important challenge for India. Then renewable energy is going very fast. Power sector reforms is one of the biggest challenges the country is facing. Industrial sustainability and competitiveness, climate risk is again, India is very vulnerable to climate risk. And then technology, finance, international trade, climate finance. So there are a host of issues that my organization works on in this larger developmental space in India. I lead something called the low carbon pathways team. Essentially what we try to understand, the India ka future, it can go in many different directions. For example, we can choose a pathway which is heavily rural economy driven pathway, जिसमें हमारा सारा फोकस रूरल सेक्टर में इन्वेस्टमेंट्स पे है. As against this, it could be a pathway where हम खाली make in India पे focus कर रहे हैं, तो हमारे सारे जो country के investments हैं, उस direction में shape हो रहे हैं. Now these are only two examples. There could be many such futures in which the country can go, and what we try to understand is all of these futures will have very different implications and very different kinds of challenges. So we just want to understand those challenges and be better prepared. So that is the kind of work that our team does, and today I will give you some snapshots on that. A bit on our research on net zero work. First of all, we have done a lot of pre-COP before the announcement. We did a lot of work on net zero, writing various opinion pieces, on the net zero thing. For example, today's discussion is about net zero, but India's economy is already on a high growth path. So for us, the challenge is not just net zero. The challenge is peak and then net zero. Because say, imagine a hill. So हम लोग अभी hill के ऊपर चढ़ रहे हैं. हमारे emissions से growth path में है. As compared to this, most of the other economies of the world, especially जिन्होंने 2050 announce किया है, like US, UK, Europe, and every economy, वो सब declining path में. Already peak कर चुके हैं. किसी ने 20 साल पहले peak किया है, किसी ने 50 साल पहले peak किया है, but वो already peak कर चुके हैं. They are on a declining path. India's emissions are on an upward path. So अभी हमारी peaking भी नहीं हुई है because हमारे growth rates बहुत high हैं. So the first question comes, well, when will peaking happen? And the second question comes, okay, after the peak, there will be a decline and we'll reach net zero. So that is the challenge for us that we have written about a lot. And again, India's role in the larger debate is not just to choose our own net zero, it is also to shape global narrative. So India is also leader, India is climate leader in the global climate discussion. So whenever we go for these international negotiations, India also does a lot of shaping of the global climate discourse. And equity has been a heart of India's debate. So हम जब net zero की बात कर रहे हैं, जैसे India said 2070, equity is extremely important because it should not happen that the developed world that is already so rich. So let me give an example. India की जो अभी की per capita income है, that is $2,000 per capita. This is our average income. The average income of the developed world is around between $40,000 to $50,000 per capita. So आप imagine कर सकते हैं, हम लोग 2,000 पे अभी, median values are 40 to 50,000. China की current value is 10,000. So इसी से आप लोग imagine कर सकते हैं कि that's why our growth rate is so high. There is so much development that will happen. And that is why equity becomes very important. Because we can't say that we want to achieve net zero. Hi, Mr. Jain. Great to see you. So I was just talking, Mr. Jain, about equity is the heart of India's net zero commitment. And it is, many countries might have asked for 2050. But for India, the developmental challenges are extremely important. We can't compromise on those. So that is the heart of our climate policy, and that is why net zero has to account for many of these things. So this particular today's presentation is something that we have recently published. Now it is also accepted in a journal, which is about implications of net zero target for India's sectoral pathways. How does each sector go? So that is what I will be talking about today. First of all, a bit about various perspectives on net zero. So in Indian civil society, there are many different perspectives. Hello. The first thing I want to emphasize is that बहुत सारे जैसे experts हमारे कहते हैं कि net zero तो 2070 है. 2070 तो 50 साल दूर है. हम लोग 50 साल दूर की बात क्यों कर रहे हैं? It's so far away, right? हम लोग तो 5 साल का हम लोग को next देखना है. That is the biggest immediate challenge. Something extremely important that we have found looking at across the world, जैसे policies बनी है, a long-term policy signal is very important. So the net zero है, even if it is 2070, it is a long-term policy signal. And when a goal is in place, then a strategy is evolved to achieve that goal, right? So right now, for example, under Paris Agreement and after Glasgow also, every country is expected to submit something called a long-term strategy. And right now the process is underway, which simply means 2070 का goal तो announce कर दिया है प्रधानमंत्री जी ने. अभी जो process चल रहा है is trying to understand how will we achieve that goal in terms of sectoral pathways, and this kind of research that we do tries to inform it. So that, but without that goal, there is no point in a strategy. हम बिना target के strategy नहीं बना सकते. I mean, it doesn't make sense. So that's why goal is very important. So what the Prime Minister has given us is a goal. It could be a 2047 goal for Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is energy independence, or it is a 2070 goal for net zero economy. But these are goals, these are long-term goals. And the expectation is that all the government policies and all the private sector investments, they will align around this goal to achieve. Together as an economy, we will try to achieve that goal. That's why the goal is very important, and the credibility and certainty are two very important principles. So this goal, just because we have said it, does not matter. What is important? It has to be credible. and it has to give a sense of certainty. And that is why the long-term strategy, the NDC that are on the table collectively. So net zero goal is one very important element, but there are many other different things. So 2030, which is NDC, then the long-term strategy will give something for, let's say, 2050. So now we will have a 2030 goal, a 2070 goal, and a 2050 intermediate target. Collectively, they will give a very strong sense of credibility and certainty to the policy, all the other arms of the government, as well as the private sector to move in that direction. Now, so comparing short-term actions, for example, many times when we say that 2070 is too long, I just want to think about 5 years. It is a false binary because these are very much aligned with each other. Our 5-year plans have to be aligned to a long-term vision. And that is very important. In fact, I would say, many times I've said this in many forums, that a big challenge with India has been for the last 50 years that we never had a long-term vision. For example, if you look at urbanization, the way it happened in India, urbanization is such a big challenge. We see so much traffic mess, and we see our roads are now so narrow given the traffic vehicles. Now all of this has happened because we never thought about a 40-year paradigm. Because when you think about 40 years, you know population will grow. We know people will become richer, they will buy cars. So many things change in decades, and we have to plan today for that 550 years down the line. So that is where short-term actions and planning is very important, but has to be within a longer-term vision. And that is what the net zero does for us. And as I said, for India, the debate is not just net zero, it is about peaking in net zero. This is a part of the debate. And within that debate, understanding alternative scenarios is very important. So before this announcement was made, this was an open question. So that is why we did this analysis where we actually looked at alternative scenarios 2050, 60, 70, 80, and then try to understand, okay, which is more feasible and ambitious, both ambitious and realistic for India. Final point I want to make, and this is a very important point, net zero is about an economic transformation. And that is extremely important for all. I want to emphasize this. Many times we think net zero is a climate target. So it is just an environmental thing, nothing more than that. The reality, in fact, very recent McKinsey report also said this. India's almost more than 35% of India's economic assets are exposed to this transition risk. So in climate, we talk about two risks. One is the climate impact risk. For example, आप लोग देख रहे होंगे चेन्नई में फ्लड्स आए इतने, हम लोगों के जो ईस्टर्न कोस्ट पे साइक्लोन्स आते हैं, इतने रेगुलरली साइक्लोन्स आते हैं. Now these are climate risks, right? The other part is transition risk. Transition risk simply means अभी यूरोप ने something, they have used something called the border carbon adjustment tax. So they have already applied it, which simply means India के जितने भी exports हैं जो यूरोप में जाते हैं, they will have to face that carbon tax, जो पहले नहीं था. But this is not a climate impact risk. This is a risk due to economic shocks during the transition that the world is now going to have. India करे या नहीं करे, Europe, US, China, Japan, already everybody is starting doing that, right? So we face a transition risk. And that is why it is very important that we don't just look at net zero from a very climate perspective. This is an environmental debate. ये खाली environmentalist को सोचने वाली बात है, ऐसा नहीं है. The net zero is an economic transformation debate, and that's why every arm of the government is thinking about it, including Ministry of Finance and our industrial policy. It is very, very relevant, not just for environment, but for the whole economy. Now, in terms of the different scenarios that we analyze, now this becomes like the technical part of the presentation. The different scenarios that we analyze, as I said, well, 50, 60, 70, 80 are the 4 different targets that we had earlier to the announcement was made. At the same time, there are 2 very important technologies. We know carbon capture and storage. We have been debating for this for so long now, but it is very expensive also for the Indian economy. But this is a technology that the world over everybody is looking at. Right? Second is hydrogen. India already has a hydrogen mission in place now. Many big private players have put a lot of money on the table for hydrogen, achieving rapid progress in hydrogen sector. But these are still very big uncertainties that are there on the table. So we wanted to assess the implications of the uncertainty. So we do a long list of scenarios. But what is important is we talk about 50, 60, 70, 80 and the implications of these different targets. The first point I want to make, these are results. So I will not go into the technical methodology. Happy to answer any questions on that. But I want to go into the important results of it. So आप लोग ये जो ग्राफ देख रहे हैं, and this is very important, जो इसमें bottom वाली line है, that is the reference scenario as we say, and this is India's electricity generation. So as you see, India's current electricity demand is around 1150 kilowatt hours per capita. So per capita 1150 units is the annual demand of electricity in India. Of course, this is very low because the median value for the developed would be 7,000 to 8,000. So there is a long room to grow, and that's what the bottom line you see there. The bottom line is rapid growth in electricity demand just by increasing income. Now all the other lines that you see on top of it, all the lines are 2070 net zero with very different technology. Like in some CCS is available, in some hydrogen is available, not available. So these are combination. Essentially, the 4 lines that we see on the top are all 2070 net zero with different combinations of technology. Right? What is common is that in the reference scenario, electricity is growing very fast, which is the bottom line. But all the net zero scenarios, you could see a very rapid demand growth in electricity, very rapid. And that is very important, that electrification of India's economy will have to be at a much faster pace. Because right now, for example, our industrial sector, more than 80% is based on fossil. And we can't do that. We can't have an 80% fossil forever if we want to achieve net zero. So electrification of all the end users, we are already seeing rapid developments in the transport sector, a lot of electric vehicles, electric cars coming in. So now this is electrification of different sectors of the economy. Transport sector, building sector is already heavily electrified in India. Right? So this is a very important result. The big electrification will have to happen at a much faster pace than what we have seen historically. The second point is, what will supply this electricity? Will it be coal? Will it be solar? What will supply this electricity? Right? So as we know, net zero, there's going to be very little room for fossil fuel unless carbon capture and storage comes in a big way. Because carbon capture and storage comes in, then you could use coal for some more time and fossil for some more time. But if that technology does not succeed, then well, we don't have an option. We have to either go for solar, wind, or nuclear energy. These are the three big pieces that will come in a very big way. So this graph shows, well, in the reference scenario also solar is growing, which is the line which is at the bottom. But all the net zero scenarios which are at the top, you see very rapid growth in solar energy. In fact, our estimate is by I think by 2070 we will go post 5,000 gigawatts. That will be the demand. Right now we are only talking about 500 gigawatts. And in fact, if you go even further, because electricity demand will continue increasing, right? So then we might need to cross 7,000 gigawatts. So big questions come in. Land is a big constraint for India. Solar is a big footprint, land footprint. Where do we get even land for this kind of thing? And we have to be prepared for these kind of future. But solar will come in a much bigger way. What do we see happening with coal? Well, we do see that coal use in power generation, and this is all power generation. So coal use in power generation in a scenario, and the shaded scenario, the top one is actually a 2080 scenario, but the lines are for 2070. So we do see that somewhere around 2040 to 45, coal use in power sector has to peak, and then it will have to come down and keep on coming down and achieve net zero in the power sector by 2070. It has to come down. In fact, before 2070 it has to come down. And whether CCS is available or not available does make a small difference, but CCS is also very expensive. CCS, the markup in CCS is around 60 to 65%, and cost of power is very important for the economy. Right? So that's why CCS, we are trying to better understand CCS, right? But the point is, even if CCS is available, coal 50 years from now will have to by and large go out of the Indian economy if net zero has to be achieved, because that is the target already on the table. Then we see the capacity of nuclear energy. Right now, our capacity in nuclear energy, installed capacity, is just around, I think, 9 gigawatts. Yeah, just around 9 gigawatts.
Just one second. Please keep your mics on mute. Please keep your mics on mute. Somebody's mic is on. Please keep it on mute. Thank you. Please go.
So whether the
Yes.
coal power generation capacity under all scenarios will be minimum 320 odd by 2040?
Well, I think it will in 2040. Yes, 2040 we are seeing around 200 or so.
100?
200 is already current level.
So it will grow. It will.
देखिए ना, अब आपकी जो line है,
So 300 is in, okay, yeah, 2040 you're talking about. Yes. 300 around 2040, so we will grow.
320 के करीब तो है ही है, और कुछ scenarios में तो वो जो आपके modeling scenarios हैं, उन सब में वो default line से ऊपर है, तो वो तो 320, 330 जा रही है.
So you're right. So basically what we are simply saying that there will be some retirements which will happen, and there will be some additions that will happen, but this will have to peak. It will have to peak there and come back.
50 years, ठीक है, we must plan 50, 70, 100 years. आज कोल माइन अगर नहीं देंगे तो फिर 2040 में बिजली नहीं मिलेगी ना.
Yeah, definitely. So this is the challenge.
From another perspective, हम लोग तो immediately वो देख रहे हैं.
Yes.
आप एनर्जी क्लाइमेट के आदमी हैं, आप दूर देख रहे हैं. हम लोग के लिए तो ये वेरी रिवीलिंग चार्ट है
कि हमारे लिए our mind life is typically 20 to 25 years. So we are seeing one cycle can be run.
Yes. No, completely. So there is room for coal to grow in the economy, somewhat grow in the economy.
No, अभी तो 205 के करीब है जो CM monitored capacity 205 है. You are saying it will go to 320 तो डिवरी हो जाएगी
50%
So there is a room to grow.
सर वो बात सही है, परसेंटेज टर्म्स पे हम नीचे जाएंगे, एब्सोल्यूट टर्म्स में ऊपर जाएंगे.
No, but then there is net addition also. Net addition that CA is not giving.
So the CA is looking at 20.
Policy correction has to be done by the government of India.
But they are looking at 2030 also. So CA does this 10-year plans. We are looking at a more longer horizon. So when we go longer, the demand also grows very fast.
Tradition has to be
so the demand grows. So something has to supply that demand. And solar and batteries, of course, they will have a much important role. As Sir is saying, the share will increase at very fast pace. But there has to be also this grid stability things and security of supply. So there is room for growth. That is what we are simply saying.
Another thing I was wondering, your first graph and the third graph, coal wala or electricity generation wala, electrification of the economy is going to happen, electric mobility, etc. So solar will come with a lag. आपका सोलर सिनेरियो सब जो सेकंड वाली जो आपकी ग्राफ है उसमें सोलर में जो एक्सप्लोजन आ रहा है वो 2040 के बाद ही आ रहा है. तो अगर इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन पहले हो गया तो कोयले की जरूरत पड़ जाएगी.
हाँ तो वो पड़ रही है डेफिनेटली. That's why we are
हो रहा है.
तो अगर दोनों ग्राफ्स को आप जक्सटापोज करके अगर देखें तो ऑलमोस्ट सर्टेनिटी लगती है.
हाँ, कोयला विल ग्रो एंड देन बाद में कहीं करेगा.
माने पीक में कंट्रीब्यूशन विल बी ऑफ कोल. दैट इज व्हाट इज कमिंग आउट.
Only when the power is generated through coal. That's what it means.
That's what it is.
for the next 20 years or so.
It's besides the point, we don't want to complicate your talk right now. But जो ट्रांसमिशन सिस्टम और सब ट्रांसमिशन सिस्टम्स हैं वो कोला ही बनवाता है. तभी कोला 4 रुपए का होता है. सोलर को तो फ्री राइट दे दिया गया इस ट्रांसमिशन सिस्टम पे. अगर ट्रांसमिशन सिस्टम जो आपने बाद में एक्सप्लोजन हुआ है 2040 के बाद वो अगर लोड कर दिया सोलर पे तो मुझे लगता है सोलर पे 220 230 का नहीं रहेगा, फिर तो 3 दिन का होगा.
Yeah. So we do take an integration cost also. So in the sense, for example, right now solar might be already touching 1.9 rupees or 2 rupees or so. We will assume for even 2030 this is like 2.6, 2.7 rupees. So some loading we do. So it is not very cheap solar also in this assessment. But the broad point you are making, Mr. Jan, is an important one. We do see role for some increase in coal-based capacity. We have to also be cognizant that the lifetime of technical lifetime of a coal power plant might be 40 years. Even though financial life might be 20 years. Right? So technical lifetime is what, which simply means maybe after 2030 or so, we might not be able to make any new capacity additions after 2030, because then if the lifetime is 40 years, technical lifetime,
no,
then
you're talking about rising capacity till 2040.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're right.
Then today new capacities have to be allowed to be added.
No, actually there are two things. One is replacement, and then in net addition also we have to do.
Both of it is subsumed in this graph.
That's what
so
I'm
new-
saying.
So that means
the
it's a 100%
CA or
increase.
MOP has to think about it.
एक्चुअली हम लोग कोल वाले लोग हैं, आज यहाँ बैठे हैं, कल कहीं और बैठे होंगे, तो हमको आपके मैसेज से ये मिल रहा है कि कोला बढ़ाओ.
So well, I am
आप आगे की तरफ देख रहे हो.
No, I completely agree. See, we are all the time saying that never you would have heard that coal will go out of the economy in 2025. We are not even saying that. I mean, CW analysis you would have read that they will still grow. It will. That is our assessment also. It will have to grow, and we have to be cognizant of the capital stock lifetime and all. Growth rates are very important. Especially if the growth rates for whatever reason become lower, then actually your demand for the next 10 years becomes lower, and that complicates things actually.
Sir, actually going by this thing, so 320 means if I take into account retirements and then the life
New
of the
plants.
power plant is 20 years, that means ki, sir, in another 8 to 10 years there has to be 100%. To 200 gigawatt we are already there. Effectively it has to be 100% because if I take into retirement then we reach 320. So 100% clear, from where is the finances going to come for coal based capacities?
Because there is so much of odium against coal that what you are saying is that new capacity needs to come. जो plants retire होंगे उनको replace करना पड़ेगा.
Yeah, well, given the electricity demands, given the growth in electricity demand that we are actually expecting next 10 years, we'll be staring at a much higher electricity. We are not 1100 kilowatt hour per capita. We might be in 10 years 2000 kilowatt hours per capita.
राज्य का प्रोजेक्शन आया है सर, MNRE का प्रोजेक्शन आया है कि 2030 में 267 गीगावाट और 2047 में 150 गीगावाट कोल बेस्ड पावर होगा.
नहीं तो ये everybody किसी डॉक्टर कक्कड़ he immediately sent me for this report of MNRE. He told me, is it possible? Is there nobody doing any thinking?
I think, sir, you are right. We are going by the noise rather than applying the mind.
आज मतलब कोल इतना बदनाम है कि कोई खड़ा होकर बोल दे.
Sir, कक्कर साहब का यही था कि you should start talking to investors, financial institutions that there is no going away from coal and thermal power plant for next 25 years. There
But
should
let me
be.
say, I think these are very important. Let me also say something, Mr. Dana. I think the framing cannot be that we want to push coal. The framing cannot be that. The entry point is that where energy security is important.
क्यों शर्म आती है ये कहने में?
No, because there is the carbon impact. So it is not about
Whether we say or not, there will be impact. That is a
आपके
given
घर
thing.
में अगर बिजली कट गई रात को,
so that is the
आपकी
point.
वाइफ कहेगी कि कहीं से लेके आओ डीजल जनरेटर जलाओ और यहीं धुआं करो.
Sir,
देश
अक्टूबर
को
में
बिजली चाहिए.
That is exactly what I am saying. The entry point has to be that grid stability, energy security is important. Grid stability is important. उसके लिए हमको हमारे पास क्या क्या ऑप्शंस हैं और उसमें आप पाएंगे कि कोल होगा.
आप एज अ रिसर्चर ये कह सकते हैं, बट माय कोलीग इट इज हिज ड्यूटी टू कम अप विद न्यू माइंस एंड ऑक्शन. शी मेक्स डिमांड प्रोजेक्शंस अलोंग विद दैट जेंटलमैन देयर. तो सब लोग किसी न किसी तरीके से कोले को बढ़ाने में लगे हुए हैं यहाँ पे. तो आप इनको क्या मैसेज देके जा रहे हैं? एंट्री पॉइंट ये होना चाहिए, डायलॉग ये होना चाहिए, वो कहना चाहिए. कुल मिला के if this ministry and all of us put together don't push the 1 billion ton agenda, your import bill may go up to 2 lakh crores.
Yeah.
Thermal coal imports will shoot up. Today the thermal coal imports prices are about $200, 15,000 rupees a ton, जो कोल इंडिया 1,500 रुपए बेचता है. अगर देश ने कोला पैदा नहीं किया और इस तरीके की डिमांड अगर आ गई तो बिजली का भाव 8 या 9 रुपए हो जाएगा. जो अगर सब्सिडाइज करने की कोशिश की स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स ने तो सारी सड़कें बननी बंद हो जाएंगी, सारा की सारी सब्सिडी बिजली में चली जाएगी.
I completely agree with you, Mr. Dan. I have no disagreement with you at all.
You are a friend of coal, I know that.
Yeah.
You came the other day and spoke to me. Ritu Mathur है जैसे, she was born in Dhanbad. She says that I know the coal economy. Nobody is really
Speaking of
taking the bull by the horn. We have to do that. Sir, वो हम ही को करना पड़ेगा.
not just the investment in Koila, investment in the new power plants
no,
also.
please educate us. That is why we want
Yes, ma'am.
set the cat among the pigeons.
Yes.
ये जो आपकी स्लाइड्स हैं, देखिए इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन ऑफ द इकोनॉमी. इनफैक्ट यूके का हम देयर इन 2012-13 when we were making the calculator in नीति आयोग, they had said कि उनकी इकोनॉमी की हैं ट्विन ऑब्जेक्टिव्स. 10 साल पहले वहां के एनर्जी सेक्रेटरी ने मुझे कहा था, इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन ऑफ डिमांड एंड प्रोविजन ऑफ हीट बाय बायोमास. वो आप लोगों ने अभी तक इंडिया में रिकॉग्नाइज नहीं किया है.
Yes.
बिकॉज इलेक्ट्रिसिटी से हीट नहीं दी जा सकती ज्यादा.
Yes.
जो अच्छा, और एक हीट स्ट्रेटजी भी इस देश को बनानी चाहिए. यूके हैज गॉट अ ब्यूटीफुल डॉक्यूमेंट कॉल्ड हीट स्ट्रेटजी. बिकॉज आपको घर में भी हीट चाहिए, लेट अस से कुकिंग के लिए, वो आपकी हीट इलेक्ट्रिसिटी से आ सकती है. बट आयरन को अगर पिघलाना है या बॉक्साइट को या स्मेल्ट करना है तो वो बहुत महंगी पड़ेगी बिजली. तो हीट, उनका कहना है कि यूके वांट्स टू सप्लाई हीट थ्रू बायोमास. एनीवे दैट इज सेपरेटली. तो इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन ऑफ द इकोनॉमी अगर होती है, जो कि होनी चाहिए, एंड यू नो दैट फाइनल एनर्जी डिमांड में इंडिया का इलेक्ट्रिसिटी का शेयर ओनली 16-17 है.
Yes.
The final energy consumed in India at home, light, air conditioning, cooling, and in running the pumps in machinery, only 16%. So that if that goes up, then whether solar can provide it, और ये या cooling, तो आपकी ये स्लाइड से कुछ फूड फॉर थॉट मिलता है. चलिए.
Yes, thank you.
सर, पावर मिनिस्ट्री में भी ये ज्ञान,
वही चीज मैं बोल रही थी. It's not just investment in Koila, investment in
प्राइवेटली बात करते हैं जैसे कि रात को चुप कर जाता है ना.
नहीं तो ये
दिन में बात नहीं करता.
नहीं सर, इनको खुल के बोलना चाहिए कि हमारी मजबूरी है. बाकी सभी कंट्रीज ने यही पाथ फॉलो किया है. वी हैपन टू बी फॉलोइंग लिटिल लेट.
देखिए सारा ट्रांसमिशन सिस्टम कोयले से बना, उसके बाद कोयले के प्लांट बंद हुए, उसी ट्रांसमिशन सिस्टम में रिन्यूएबल चला। हमको तो ट्रांसमिशन सिस्टम सब DDUGGY, RGGVY वो सब बनाने हैं
सर प्लस
क्योंकि गांव में जो ये जो सब छोटे छोटे, आप लोग तो एक्सपर्ट हैं, ये रॉकेफेलर वाले जो हैं दिशा घोष, you know her, she was telling me that Mr. Jain, 5 kilometers from Kanpur, using Lucknow, they went and did a study. People work in Lucknow, government servants, also जैसे हमारे यहाँ बवाना से बहुत लोग आते हैं रोज, माइंस में सेक्रेटरी था तो मेरा ड्राइवर ही बवाना से रोज आता है। तो she was saying that 5 kilometers from Lucknow, there is no power in the whole day. It only comes in the evening and it comes in the morning. So when people go back home on their scooters and supposing their tire pressure, scooter के टायर का हवा निकल गई है, तो कंप्रेसर नहीं चलते हैं। तो she was saying कि हमने वहाँ पे डिसेंट्रलाइज्ड सोलर सॉल्यूशंस दिए हैं और उसमें बिजली 15 रुपए यूनिट भी खरीदते हैं लोग, 15 रुपए यूनिट, क्योंकि जो साइकिल की पंचर लगाता है उससे आदमी हवा भरवाने के लिए 10 रुपए, हम लोग यहाँ तो फ्री में पंप पे फ्री में हवा भरती है। तो गाँव में जहाँ बिजली नहीं है, अगर कोई कहे कि मैं डीजल से बिजली बना के तुमको कंप्रेसर में बिजली देता हूँ, तो लोग 5-5 रुपए देते हैं।
सर व्हाई गो फार? गुड़गांव में जितनी हाई क्लास कॉलोनीज हैं, 15 दे आर चार्जिंग, अगर इलेक्ट्रिसिटी वो लगे हुए 18 रुपीज पर यूनिट द चार्ज यू पे। तो ये डीजल जनरेटर्स हैं।
इट्स अ ग्रिम सिचुएशन।
Okay, yeah. So now also I will quickly talk about transport and industrial sector. I mean, the story is similar. Electrification of all the sector is going to be very important. The question is also what will happen to hydrogen, because hydrogen is also another very important fuel coming in the economy. Depending if it becomes successful, we do see hydrogen also taking 20-25%. Because hydrogen applications are also not universal as of now. So there's some sectors like iron, steel, where we do think hydrogen will come in a big way, but we have not found universal application of hydrogen. So it is not going to take 80% of industrial energy use, and that's why we still need to find some solution for industrial sector heat, as Mr. Jain is saying, because electrification and hydrogen both will come in a very big way, but there are also some limitation on these sectors. Now let me talk about 12 key steps. If we have to achieve 2070 net zero, then sector wise, for example, power sector, coal-based power generation must peak around 2040 and reduce by 99% in the next 20 years. So that is what one of the insights has been. Because for net zero is not just about power sector. Our industrial sector will be much bigger, and there has to be an orderly transition across sectors. So when do we do this kind of analysis, the insight that we get from modeling and all is always across sectors, how does the dynamic is playing, and that's how we get these kind of results. Then you can see solar-based capacity very rapid growth, as I said, beyond 5,500 gigawatts by 2070. Wind-based generation capacity also going very high, almost beyond 1,700 gigawatts. Nuclear also has to go beyond 200 gigawatts. So now, essentially, the moment you are forced to take fossil out of the economy, and carbon capture and storage is not available, the only choices for the power sector end up becoming bigger choices. Biomass is also going to be there, but the bigger ones end up being solar, wind, and nuclear energy, right? And these are the extent of numbers that we see.
One
Yes.
small question that keeps bothering me. We have got huge hydro potential, 1,50,000 megawatts.
Yes.
Nearly half is remaining untapped.
Yes.
Have we stopped looking at it?
It is also there a part of the assessment, but if you look at the numbers here, these numbers, for example, solar is 5,500, right? And nuclear is also a very different form of energy. So hydro in that comparison becomes much lesser. So it is also around 200 gigawatts.
Hydropower as energy source, entire world is dead. Now, the cost of generating hydropower is much more longer negative impact in the world on the communities. Now they are not actually doing. In fact, in North America and Latin America, they are actually dismantling the constructed hydropower projects.
Yeah, I also heard that. I know that they are decommissioning.
Yeah, decommissioning.
No, it's not because the cost is high, but because they are
migratory. Not financial cost.
Yeah.
Cost to the community. Cost to society.
So the environmental and social concerns.
You know who did that study?
Evidence in
Nelson Mandela.
Oh.
Nelson Mandela was asked by UN or somebody, because Africa में बहुत hydro projects आ रहे थे, tribals were getting uprooted. So Nelson Mandela probably has done that study, which revealed that hydro is inequitable. it punishes the tribals and the poor, it gives electricity to the rich. So after that, large hydro projects are no longer treated as renewables. Though it is renewable power, पानी हर साल बारिश आता है, cycle होता है. So it is treated as non-fossil,
Non-fossil,
but
that's
it is
what
not
it
treated as
renewable energy.
renewable.
You remember sir, this Hoover dam?
Yeah,
Now they have taken the decision to decommission it.
Large dam, they are
Silt हो गया होगा.
No. It's
हो
functional.
चुके हैं जिसको होना.
No, because of the ecological, they have done a study.
Sir, the fish
There are 100 years of
entire
study they have
roots
done.
have been cut off.
It has the entire area, ecology has changed.
But run of the river तो आ सकते हैं ना.
हाँ, ROR आने चाहिए.
But
और
potential,
potential जो है उसमें maximum
Maximum उसी में है.
अरुणाचल तो पूरा वही है, run of the river.
अरुणाचल
but
सिक्किम,
in
हिमाचल,
terms of the larger
LK,
numbers, the larger numbers, I don't think they are beyond 50-60 gigawatts in terms of the larger numbers.
No.
So the Arunachal and Northeast itself has the potential of around 1 lakh megawatt. Northeast.
1 lakh
river है कि
megawatt.
storage है. Run of the river.
The complete potential identified gas that is around 1 lakh megawatt for Australia.
So 100 gigawatts essentially.
All these figures are with the current PUF for renewable.
Current cost you think?
Current PUF, plant utilization factors.
Okay, yes. I mean these are around, we assume for solar around 16.5%.
So if it changes even by say 4 to 5%, then the figures they'll go
So
a long way.
the way the model will work in terms of cost terms, let's say the investor is coming in, investor is deciding where to invest in. So they will only look at the levelized cost, the profits they are getting. So that's how these are estimated, all the numbers.
And whether why are we not giving equal importance to wind in the country?
So because solar, the potential appears to be very high, and also associated with the domestic manufacturing economy, with batteries and solar, they align very well. And that so we are.
Wind की तो turbine capacity India में surplus है, हम export कर रहे हैं turbines.
No, definitely, we are exporting also turbines. So it is. So I don't have an answer. In fact, this was the question also that was being raised, that wind should also get a push, and we have been saying this. Both have a very important role.
Offshore में wind की capacity
बहुत ज़्यादा है sir.
Offshore right now is very costly actually. Right now, it's very costly.
nuclear से तो कम है.
Safe.
Do you know what is the price of nuclear?
Nuclear, I think 5.5 rupees is what we are
No,
doing.
that must be subsidized.
That is not the.
Okay, that's the
That is not the
subsidy.
price.
Yeah.
Please, इसको ढंग से study करो. Do you know what is the cost of Kudanpur? I was on their board of Nuclear Power Corporation for 2 years. 52 crore rupees a megawatt.
अरे बाप रे.
But there is no fuel
Nobody
cost.
knows it. आप Google करके देख लेना.
But sir, isn't there no fuel cost? That is the one big.
Capex
handle the project.
Capex होता
ठीक
है.
है, OPEX उसकी OPEX तो है. It is not the fast breeder technology.
Yes.
Fuels burned out.
Yeah.
9 रुपए 10 रुपए फाइनेंशियल कॉस्ट 9-10 रुपए पड़ जाती है Kudanpur.
So the storage cost बहुत high है sir. Used fuel की the cost of storage is also very high.
But it's a different ballgame, that project.
We'll talk about separately. We are on this thing.
Yeah. So I think your points are very valid.
Nuclear बहुत महंगा है. Wind क्यों नहीं करते हम?
Yeah. So ultimately, sir, let me also say how do we understand these scenarios? We are simply saying if CCS is not successful, and the economy has to achieve net zero, so then कोई option है नहीं. I mean,
अच्छा
then,
अगर CCS आ जाता है.
yes.
Then can coal go on till 2100?
Well, it can.
Tell me.
No, it can go on, but only the question will always be what are the other options in the power sector and how cheap or how expensive are
Then
they?
it should be economic viability.
Economic viability, it is there. So CCS is 60% plus cost. It's very expensive. Right now we are assuming 7.5 rupees, 7 rupees something of CCS based coal power. That around that, somewhere around that.
You also know कि CCS को वर्ल्ड ने इम्पोर्टेंस ही नहीं दी थी, क्योंकि ऐसा लगता था कि CCS आ जाने से कोल को ग्रोथ मिल जाएगी. लेकिन अब जब इन लोगों ने ये जो ब्लू हाइड्रोजन शुरू किया, तो गैस में जो CO2 निकलेगा उसको दबाने के लिए CCS की फिर चर्चा शुरू हो गई. तो इंडिया इज अ टेक्नोलॉजी टेकर.
It is always be a
Not a
technology.
technology developer.
Apart from hydrogen, where we might become a technology developer in hydrogen.
लेकिन ये जो CCS है,
It's not.
अब ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन में तो इंडिया कैन probably do something.
Yes.
But ब्लू हाइड्रोजन तो सारा यूरोप कर रहा है.
So
उनके पास इतना सोलर नहीं है.
So the larger point you are making is that every country, like even Europe and US, as far as the government is concerned, they know that fossils are going to be important. For example, gas and oil is going to be important forever for many of these economies. So they are always seriously looking at CCS. So US, as we know, under the earlier president, also had this incentive specifically for CCS coming in a big way. But even after so long incentives given for CCS for almost 2 decades and more than 2 decades, the technology, the cost we have not managed to somehow, and the pilots have been going for so long. So ultimately, it's also about, some successful demonstration of pilots and making the cost economically viable. CCS has not managed to do that, even
India
though.
did not work on CCS.
But other countries have. I'm just saying US and Europe have put a lot of money on CCS. Somehow we have not managed to, because as far as the every government goes, they do want CCS to be successful. Because every government knows it that their own resource, which is gas resource or shale oil resource and all, they will get a fillip if CCS is successful. So they have an incentive for making CCS successful. Somehow it will not happen.
Work has been done on CCS?
I think there is enough projects, pilot projects. EU has put in a lot of money, but it is always at what stage you put in money and what is the success from that stage. So CCS has never managed to go beyond that first stage of demonstration plants and many of those things. That big money can start coming in into commercialization stage. That has never happened. But it is not because of lack of intent at all. The intent is there. It is the same logic in India. We say CCS is successful. It can give a lease of life to coal. Very same logic in Middle East also, in US also. They are also fossil based currently. But the intent is there, but somehow we have not managed to see actual progress on the ground. So the progress we have seen is actually in batteries in a big way, in the cost of solar in a big way. So right now, wherever there is progress, that's where a lot of focus has started coming in, in all of these economies.
Actually, once the first sentence,
sure.
I don't know, I just wanted to. If it is going to peak at 2040, how it is going to reduce by 99%? 40, 60.
Because many of the investments that are currently made, let's say a investment that is made in 2020.
No, it can't reduce by 99%. We do whatever modeling. The technical life of a plant is about 40 years, 45 years. Okay, if you peaks in 2040, let's say, after investment, that has to live for 40 years or 30 years, let's say.
But so there will be some stranded asset and some cost of that. So some of the plant, so you will install some plant in the near term for meeting the supply issues and all, stability issues and all. But we must know, see, the way I always explain India's economy is like an airplane. It's not like a two-wheeler, which means the turning radius is very high. So we can't expect that 2060 we will peak and 2070 will go net zero.
That's what I'm saying.
So we have to peak somewhere around 2040, 45 we will peak.
Point is, when you peak in 2040, it is very difficult to take a U-turn by 99%.
20 years.
Because the economy grows. Okay, a larger economy it is difficult to turn the bigger truck than the smaller scooter.
Exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. See, but I'm saying there will be some hit in terms of maybe stranded assets, some cost will be borne by the economy. So that's a very valid point. Maybe we will not complete the technical life of many coal projects. That is going to be the outcome of this.
I think what upshot of what Nagaraj is saying is that if we peak in 2040, then will it be easy for us without a huge penalty to achieve net zero in 2070?
So cost to the economy essentially. So there will be a cost to the economy. I will also come to that slide. But this climate debate.
Is there any other country in the world which will have to scrap assets which have still not depreciated? कोई और country है दुनिया में जो कि जिसको अपनी climate change के चक्कर में ऐसे assets को scrap करना पड़ेगा जिनके भी depreciated value नहीं निकली है, तो कौन लगाएगा पैसा ये? टाटा बिरला तो नहीं लगाएगा।
जर्मनी
को एनटीपीसी ने तो अभी से बोल दिया कि हम थर्मल नहीं लगाएंगे, तो 2040 वाली कैपेसिटी आएगी ही नहीं।
So Germany, which is shouting from rooftop, they are declining to scrap their existing power plants. They are saying they will run till the end.
2040 तक है।
But they keep on talking.
2040 में peak करेंगे तो सारे plants तो new
coal study चाहिए।
I think we should set up, sir.
Okay, so let me move quickly to other sectors. Similar other sectors also we will see, some similar kind of progress that we need. Let me come to more important, interesting aspects like economic trade-offs. The first trade-off is power pricing reforms. For example, if we want electrification in such a big way of the economy, thank you. If you want electrification of the economy in such a big way, well, in current power pricing setup, it is going to be next to impossible because for industrial sector, it is so expensive electricity. That is why only 17-80% of industrial energy use is electrified because it is very expensive, and it is also a competitiveness issue for the larger industrial sector in India. As against this, many other economies of the world, for example, Japan, their pricing policy is opposite. they subsidize industrial electricity and they penalize residential electricity. It's a very different, energy policies in very different regions. Because for them, an element of energy pricing is economic competitiveness of the industrial sector. Same in UK. So many other economies do that way.
Power to industry is cheaper than the power to homes.
Exactly.
India will retire.
India will retire. So which has implications? That's why we don't see electrification, that is why we don't see our solar manufacturing becoming competitive, because electricity price becomes so high in that sector. So these are trade-offs. Ultimately, the government will have to choose.
But
It is very difficult.
Does industry subsidize urban, or does urban subsidize rural urban होता है?
Yes.
So urban में ही जो हम झोपड़ी को फ्री देते हैं, उनको सब्सिडी हम लोग 8 रुपए 10 रुपए देके करते हैं कि हमें इंडस्ट्री से भी कुछ सब्सिडी मिलती है?
I think industry, if you look at the larger numbers, because the penetration of electricity is so low in the industrial sector, so maybe the revenue that we collect from the industrial sector is not good enough. That's why our distribution companies are always in financial losses. Because if the revenue was so big, please sir.
Industrial sector is a point supply. Doesn't require huge big distribution network. Distribution network costs you a lot. There is a lot of loss in transition. But industry is a point supply. It's much easier for any distribution company. They make a lot of money from industry rather than from.
They do. That's what I'm saying.
Subsidizing urban? Central Power Engineering Service.
Industrial. We charge a higher rate for industries, sir.
Yes.
All states.
Also commercial.
But average is
7 rupees.
Average is about 7.5.
Yeah.
Average.
Yeah. But
does it subsidize agriculture?
No. That money is.
Or does it subsidize?
That money is built into subsidizing the rural households, sir.
It goes into the pool, sir. You don't know from the pool where it is going.
Segment wise हो सकता है.
Segment wise.
Urban, अगर मैं सिर्फ residential लेता हूँ, तो residential में हम लोग देते हैं 9 रुपए 10 रुपए, बॉम्बे में नरीमन पॉइंट वगैरह पे और मरीन ड्राइव वाले लोग 12 रुपए भी देते हैं. तो अगर अर्बन का ही टोटल बिल निकालें, तो क्या वो सेल्फ कंटेन्ड है कि उसको किसी और सेगमेंट से? That's what I mean. This is the question. पता करके जरा बताना.
But
distribution company से पता चल जाएगा. कुछ का देखोगे ना, जैसे दिल्ली है, ये है.
वो बैलेंस नहीं हो रहा है. This is the reason that distribution companies are.
Yes. See, the larger
segment wise. Yes. Segment wise business.
But the larger point is the total revenue that is being collected from industrial and commercial. It is not sufficient to subsidize for the other subsidy wherever you get. That's why the losses are there. If the revenue was big enough, total revenue, not the total revenue is big enough, then
correct.
So that's
our pricing reform के बिना.
Yes.
So you are trying to make a point that this energy transition will actually be an economic transition.
It is an economic transition, and I think all of us, we need to be aligned with that idea. It's very important.
This is an economic transition.
And then has to be a new paradigm for coal-dependent states. So especially there are 3 coal-dependent states: Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh. A lot of royalties and revenues and local economy is based on coal economy. There has to be an orderly, just transition. We have to tell them, maybe give them 40 years to go. So it cannot be just a 10-year transition suddenly for these states. So that is something important. Some sort of compensation package, retraining package for so many coal workers that are there in these states. Now, these companies, this is very interesting. What will happen for Coal India Limited, ONGC, GAIL, because these are companies around fossil energy. And when the fossil itself has to go out of, in a big way, it might be their marginal way, in a big way it has to go out in next 40-50 years. We have to be prepared for these companies.
But maybe जैसे हम लोग को आपने बोला कि 2040 में हमको पीक करना पड़ेगा. Maybe ONGC और GAIL जैसी कंपनियां जो ऑयल और गैस में हैं, इनकी पीकिंग शायद 50-60 में भी आएगी.
50 में.
हाँ, बिल्कुल.
जल्दी हिट नहीं करेगा.
But we have to
और लीज ऑफ लाइफ और मिलेगा.
बिल्कुल. Yes. Then of course there is a shifting geopolitics, because energy trade is shifting in a very big way. There's also a big reason for hydrogen is actually very interesting. Can India become an energy exporter? Till now India has exported oil in such a big way. For example, Japan imports gas in a big way, right, from many different places, let's say Qatar and Russia. Now can India start supplying hydrogen to Japan? And that's a very interesting possibility for us. So as a country, instead of becoming an energy dependent or importing economy, we actually start exporting energy to the countries if we are able to successfully
build. But I think ये suddenly ये बात उठी पिछले 3 महीने में, जब से रिलायंस ने $75 billion अनाउंस किया कि इंडिया में तो हाइड्रोजन एक्सपोर्टर. What is the competitive advantage India has, let us say, over Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia के पास तो बहुत जमीन है. Solar hydrogen is being thought of in India as a good fit, because we have 300 clear sunny days. तो हम लोग पानी को स्प्लिट कर देंगे, इलेक्ट्रोलिसिस कर देंगे, उसका हाइड्रोजन निकाल के हम एक्सपोर्ट कर देंगे। यही बात चल पड़ी ना।
यस यस।
तो हमने क्या कभी किसी ने रिसर्च की कि कतर, कुवैत, सऊदी अरेबिया, ऑस्ट्रेलिया फॉर दैट मैटर, आउटबैक इतना बड़ा खाली पड़ा है, तो रहते ही कोस्ट पे है।
यस। So there will be many. So you're right. There will be many hydrogen suppliers.
मुकेश अंबानी के $75 billion से हाइड्रोजन एक्सपोर्टर।
But sir, let me say this an interesting aspect to this. Right now there are many oil and gas producers. There is no single, but all of these are oil and gas producers, right? So we can imagine an OPEC kind of institution. Right? Instead of oil, petroleum exporting countries, we can have a hydrogen exporting countries grouping in the future. India, but we can. I mean, this goal has to be there. I mean, I like this goal that India should become an energy exporter. You know, we should pursue it. You know, if successful or not. Okay. Stranded assets, as sir also said, it is going to come in. We'll have to deal with stranded assets at some point of time. And then this policy cost, Mr. Jan, you were talking about. Essentially, you know, there will be some policy cost to the economy. The right side is as a percentage of GDP. So if we wanted, let's say 2050 net zero, then the policy cost is very high. You are seeing 7% of GDP, very high cost actually. Even in a scenario which is, you know, later 2070, we do expect 3 to 4% of India's GDP as the policy cost.
Tell me what became of the validity of Kirit Parikh LCIG report? Is it valid?
I think every report, because now things have changed so much. Time, I mean, every 2 years we should be updating all of this. Even this analysis, I would like to update next 2 years if some new information comes. Big shifts happen. For example, net zero itself is a very big shift. Any of the earlier reports don't have it.
We did ISS 2047. That time, Himanshu and we said in 2014. In 2047 में India may have 750 gigawatts of solar and 750 gigawatts of wind. तो लोग हमको मारने आए थे. आप 5000 कह रहे हैं.
जी सर, but लोग हमको मार नहीं रहे हैं because हम net
zero विश्वास नहीं करते हैं.
So because net zero की बात कर रहे हैं इसलिए. So net zero is a very different kind of world.
लोगों ने थिंकिंग भी नहीं किया है कि जो आप बात कर रहे हैं 5000 गीगावाट आप कह रहे हैं सोलर आ जाएगा.
Yes, yes.
तो इस 50 लाख मेगावाट.
Yes, sir.
That's what it means.
Sir, okay, let me say we are not predicting. We are simply saying अगर net zero achieve करना है तो फिर ये सब होना पड़ेगा. मतलब आपके पास कोयला भी नहीं है. जी सर, जी सर.
इतना लैंड कहाँ से आएगा? इतना गीगावाट
लैंड वाला काम किया आपने कुछ?
हाँ सर, ये देखिए लैंड का ये है इसमें जो हम लोगों ने लैंड का बताया है. So land, water and employment from the power sector only. Land is going to be a very big impediment, especially for solar. Now basically we have to think about, which simply means we have to think about distributed energy like rooftop in a very big way. We have to think about co-location strategies which will increase the cost of solar. Co-location simply means agriculture के साथ हम लोग क्या solar को लगा सकते हैं, which are movable panels. Now very new kind of technologies will have to come in essentially, which right now there are nowhere, but they also will increase the cost of solar energy. Essentially land is a big constraint. We have to be cognizant of this. This is what we are.
Unless the technology, solar technology changes, doesn't require big land.
Yes, maybe the efficiency of solar panel.
Maybe a columnar thing.
Yes, exactly.
Type to कहीं खड़े कर.
अभी क्या solar panels की efficiency 22% हो गई क्या?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
अभी भी 18-19% ही है.
But the only way what people are talking about.
Coal India भी conceive करा 22% लेके चल रहे हैं.
So the only way we are thinking about is if some new materials come in for solar panels. So नए materials से तो हम हो सकता है high efficient. So that is the innovation part. For achieving these kind of scenarios, I mean those things will have to come in the sense we have to have big efficiency gains in solar.
The other day that everybody in their garden should have a solar tree. Solar tree का concept पता नहीं आप लोगों को सबको मालूम है. एक पोल उससे पैनल टंगे हुए ऐसे. आपके गार्डन में पेड़ की तरह से ब्रांचेस जैसे फल की टंगी होती है, तो then it doesn't need so much of horizontal space. But ऐसे it's a solar tree.
Yeah. So these exactly are very innovative ways of thinking about solar, which have to be coming in a big way. Yeah. So one final point or last couple of slides I have is when we talk about net zero, I also want to emphasize that India will be a much more richer economy. So the many issues like affordability, energy will be expensive, electricity will be more expensive. But right now, as I said, our income is $2,000 per capita, right? China is around 10,000. So with just natural growth rate of income, we are seeing India to become, let's say, formally a rich income economy, and the World Bank defines formally rich income as a country which has $12,500 per capita. So China is expected to formally become a rich economy around 27-28, which will cross that level of 12,500. India will be expected to be anywhere between 2055 and 2060. That is when we will formally achieve a rich income economy tag. And of course, we know we will become much more richer. 10,000 is also very high levels of income, current to 2,000 today. So this future, when we are talking about, and in fact, when we, Mr. Jain, as you would be knowing, CW has been saying 2070 for a long time, not just based on modeling, but these are all out of the modeling logic that we are building, that for a rich country should not say that I also need 50 years for becoming net zero. If India will become very rich in 2050, then maybe we should say, if technologies are also already there, India has got enough fiscal space, that is very important, then maybe we should try to achieve net zero in 2070-75. So that was our argument, looking at not just the modeling result, but these kind of things, because economic development is the heart of it. We have already achieved economic development in this future. By 2050-55, we would already be a rich economy, solved many energy access problems, many things, just by the natural process of economic growth that we need to understand. And in that scenario, we will achieve a net zero future. So 2070, India will be very rich economy.
About this, trying to look at international definitions to tell us whether we have become rich or not is not a good thing to do. So Kirit Parikh की जो report थी, low carbon inclusive growth, उसमें उसने उसको कुछ पैरामीटर्स दे दिए थे कि सबके पास घर होगा, सबके बच्चे स्कूल जाएंगे, ठीक है ना, हेल्थ पैरामीटर्स इंप्रूव हो जाएंगे. तो we should first settle those parameters, क्या होना चाहिए, उसको monetary terms में develop करना चाहिए, फिर अपने को देखना चाहिए कि हम developed हैं कि नहीं हैं.
So I completely agree, but
the बात ठीक है आपकी. एक development it has to be India specific. Two, India has generally been कि forego things ना, lifestyle ऐसी रही है, वो शास्त्रीय व्रत ये वो आप सारा याद करो ना, doesn't have to be high consumption growth.
Yes.
No. Because of the dollar devaluation, suddenly in the last 1 week, India has become poorer.
Yes.
तो उस वो वाला तो हमें हमेशा गरीब दिखाता रहेगा ना.
ये डॉलर टर्म्स में है ना.
सर वो एक्सटर्नैलिटी है उसमें ज्यादा.
डॉलर 70 रुपए का हो गया तो इंडिया गरीब हो गया सर.
सही बात है.
सर उसमें एक्सटर्नैलिटी ज्यादा है, तभी आपका वो आर्गुमेंट बिल्कुल ठीक है कि हम इनवर्ट देखें और अपने हिसाब से डिफाइन करें हम कहाँ हैं.
बट कोई बात आती है, ये प्रयास अशोक एंड ऑल को. Niti Aayog was a time when I dabbled with all this. So when I had gone to their think tank in Pune and discussed with them, so they had said that we have to, the electricity demand for residential areas is what they did, residential sector. So they said that when do you think that the rural-urban divide in power demand? जैसे हम लोग घर में AC है, माइक्रोवेव है, फ्रिज है, वॉशिंग मशीन है, ड्रायर भी है कपड़े का, टोस्टर भी है और अवन भी है, कुछ है, तो हम लोग की पर कैपिटा ज्यादा है, रूरल एरिया में इतनी नहीं है. So we had discussed that time that when do you think the rural-urban power divide will get over? So we thought 32 में हो जाएगी. So 2012 में हमने कहा कि 20 साल बहुत होते हैं. पता नहीं आपका क्या कहते हैं? What do all of us think? क्यों मंसल जी? गांव में माइक्रोवेव ओवन कब आ जाएगा ये बता.
सर ऑलरेडी है मेरे.
Next 5 years.
वो 4 घर.
I think
पंजाब में
next 5 years. Next 5 years. हर घर में माइक्रोवेव.
Okay, let's say 60%.
No, नहीं होगा. Next 5 years.
1 second. इस घर में जितने लोग बैठे हैं, क्या सबके घर में माइक्रोवेव है?
Yes.
किसके घर में नहीं है, हाथ उठाए. 100% कभी नहीं आएगा.
जिसके घर में दो है वो भी हाथ उठाए.
Let's say 90%.
अर्बन में भी सबके यहाँ नहीं मिलेगा.
75.
सर रूरल में जो इरिगेशन वगैरह के लिए जो पर कैपिटा कंजम्पशन होता है इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, वो ऑफसेट नहीं होता है इसमें.
सब कुछ ले लेते हैं. नहीं, पर कैपिटा में तो वो सारा लेते हैं, उसको पॉपुलेशन डिवाइड कर देते हैं. बट अगर अलग अलग सेगमेंट का निकालना हो तो आपके घर का अलग निकलेगा.
नहीं, व्हाट यू आर सेइंग दैट हमारा जो पर कैपिटा ज्यादा है कंपेयर टू द रूरल जो है, वो रूरल में जो उनका होगा सर इरिगेशन वगैरह में जो कंट्रीब्यूशन होगा, वो तो उनका पर कैपिटा बढ़ाना नहीं चाहिए.
एक्टिविटी को शामिल करते हैं,
नहीं करते.
बट एक्चुअली सर ऐसे रेसिडेंशियल ये देता है, स्पेशली रेसिडेंशियल कंजम्पशन का अलग से डेटा देता है.
तो पर कैपिटा इज लाइक 2 सेगमेंट में, 1 रेसिडेंशियल एंड 1 ओवरऑल.
of the rural areas.
तो आप
even
दोनों
of
तरह से कर
lifestyle.
सकते हैं.
And we have-
रूरल में
तो कुछ और
बिलिंग ही नहीं है,
AC यूज
चल
करना।
रहा।
अब सीए कुछ देता है इन्फॉर्मेशन की अर्बन एरियाज में, वो कहाँ से देता है वो पता नहीं.
तो टीवी अच्छा बोलो
Sir, maybe we are stuck on the affordability part. Village में अभी इसलिए नहीं है कि ना कि उसको जरूरत नहीं है सर, ये भी हो सकता है.
said that people may
May not require it, sir.
People may not go in for microwave.
Sir.
So let me tell you that the girls who are growing in rural areas, who will be the future mothers, housewives, they are very smart.
Yeah.
They don't want to go, लकड़ी बीनने जा रही हैं, हेड पे ला रही हैं, ये ला रही हैं. They want, whatever
LPG हो, yeah.
women hygiene or child bearing. They all want. लैक्टोजन अभी बच्चों को लैक्टोजन भी खिलाने लग गई होंगी, जो हम लोगों ने अपने बच्चों को 20 साल 25 साल पहले खिलाया.
सर गांव में देखिए,
इकोनॉमी में अब कोई
गांव में हमारे गांव में टीवी फ्रिज ये तो पहुंच गया.
टीवी शायद 90% होम में.
टीवी है.
I think data is-
मोबाइल फोन probably 98 में होगा.
Double, sir.
Yes.
Mobile phone is double large number of people.
फ्रिज है,
मोबाइल
फ्रिज
है.
ज्यादातर घरों में है. मोटरसाइकिल would be about 70-80%.
ये मुझे थोड़ा सा दुख दे रहा है.
Yes, but let me say
2070 में हम अमीर कहलाए.
no 2070 में हम बहुत ज्यादा हो चुके. I am saying that 2045 तक
मैं जब इनके
10,000
SLC
5 गुना इनकम बढ़ चुकी होगी
बोलते हैं ना कि बिजली महंगी हो जाएगी, मैं बोलता हूँ यार किस गरीब की बात कर रहे हो. जो आप शताब्दी में चलिए, एग्जीक्यूटिव क्लास पहले बुक हो जाता है. जहाज में बुक करने जाओ, बोले जल्दी बुक कर लो तो एग्जीक्यूटिव पहले बुक हो जाएगा. यू कॉल योरसेल्फ गरीब कंट्री, यू आर नो लॉन्गर गरीब.
नहीं चलो गरीब
But
तो
ये-
सर एसी क्लासेस पहले बुक हो
Definition
जाते हैं. हाउ डू यू कॉल योरसेल्फ गरीब?
I am very surprised in New Motibaग. Very often I see drivers eating food. ना
Yes, sir.
बेचारे
Sir,
खड़े सिल्वर फॉइल में खाना लाते हैं.
Yes.
सिल्वर फॉइल में लाते हैं. तो ये आपका जो डेवलप्ड, नो आई एम नॉट स्टक.
Yes.
यू आर अ मॉडलर. आई डोंट वांट टू गेट इनटू डेवलपमेंट विद यू, बट एनर्जी से इसका लिंक है. आपने कहा ना कि एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन विल इन्वॉल्व इन इकोनॉमिक ट्रांजिशन. कहीं ऐसा ना हो कि हम लोग एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन के चक्कर में अपनी इकोनॉमी को धक्का पहुंचा दें. दैट इज द पॉइंट आई एम आस्किंग.
yes
कि 2070 का एजेंडा लेके चल रहे हैं और बिजली इतनी हमने महंगी कर दी कि हमारा जो पॉवर्टी और ग्रोथ पैरामीटर्स है वो पुश हो गए. अगर मैं उल्टा चलूं कि व्हेन विल आई बी इकोनॉमिकली प्रॉस्परस सो दैट नाउ एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन आई कैन टॉलरेट. आज एक गोरे को अगर आप पूरी रिन्यूएबल की बिजली दे दो, ₹1 ₹2 यूनिट महंगी हो जाएगी, आराम से वो फिर भी अपनी वाइन और चीज और विस्की पीता है. तो इंडिया में नहीं है ना वो. अगर हमने एनर्जी महंगी कर दी तो चाहे हमने गरीब को फ्री में दी तो बजट इम्पैक्ट हो जाएंगे.
yes.
तो इसलिए थोड़ा सा इसको देखिएगा.
I think all these in our assessment, all of these variables are also there. So we do have even rural urban inequity, rural urban electrification rate. जो ऐसे with economy, as you're saying, economy grows, people will buy more ACs, more cars. तो वो सारी चीजें already inbuilt होती हैं. And we are seeing that income will grow, because of which all of these transitions will already happen. So we are seeing a rapid electrification, and that's why I'm saying these are indicators of development, and this is the indicator of income. That's
To free you also quickly.
so I think final point I want to make, I mean, this is one of the recent works on net zero. Some big institutional shifts we are seeing actually, we are going to see. For example, let's say the coal economy of India. I mean, coal was nationalized long back. Now we have started opening, right? But we also have NTPC, which is a public sector undertaking, which has the almost an big access to coal, and all the thermal power plants are coal based, right? We also had banks which are nationalized in a big way. So all the finance access is also there for all this chain, NTPC, Coal India Limited, and banks, right? The solar economy is going to be very different, because many private players, solar you cannot nationalize solar just by the nature of the resource. Coal you can nationalize, solar you cannot nationalize. Just by the nature of the resource, we have already started seeing big players coming in, backed by Goldman Sachs or backed by domestic companies who have entered into the solar generation domain. So the competitive landscape of India's power sector will be actually very different. It will be much more competitive just by the nature of because the nature of the resource will change, which is a big institutional shift we will see in 30 years, which is very interesting. Because then when private companies come in, and the dynamics of the grid management will become very sophisticated. So for example, even the developed world, let's say if there are 3 levels, A, B, C. So for the developed world is at B right now. For a 80% or 90% renewable energy penetration, we need to be at level C. It has to be a very different sophisticated grid management capability that have to be there. India right now is probably somewhere between A and B. We still have to reach B, and then we have to reach C. So very different kind of distribution system has to be there in that economy. which means, and we'll have to deal with this, some sort of privatization even for the distribution sector, because we have to pull these capabilities. These very sophisticated capabilities have to come to these sectors to actually manage many of these processes of the future that will come in. So market-based retail pricing, electricity structure, very different power market design, has to come in, and many other institutional arrangements will have to come in, as I've just listed here. In terms of strategies, I think engagement with labor sector workforce is going to be very important. So all these labor unions that are there in the power sector, be it distribution companies, be it coal sector, engaging with them is going to be very important, because it could be Achilles heel of India's transition towards a net zero future. Carbon pricing, we do think it's an important strategy. Plus also engaging with citizens, whereas as Prime Minister has also said repeatedly many times, by lifestyle for the environment, which is about behavioral change. For behavioral change, one has to engage with citizens and has to tell them very operational things, because otherwise it becomes a very...
Behavioral change, religion को involve करना पड़ेगा. You may not like it. I have been advocating since 2005. Religion controls lifestyle more than anything else.
Yeah, no, very interesting points. I see what you are saying. That is probably the only thing that will push people to change their behavior. Otherwise,
but don't take these gurus to be religious.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is,
a Sadguru is going to sit on a Harley Davidson and come from UK to India to create awareness for water is not religion.
No, what I'm saying is, जो भी बड़े religious leader हैं who are influencing people in their lifestyle or way of living, we should start engaging them. आप जो भाषण देते हो उसमें थोड़ा सा ये भी बोल दिया करो. Sir, मैं तो हमेशा रामदेव का एग्जांपल देता हूँ ना. How many people in the park you find doing pranayam? It's all Ramdev taught.
Yes.
If you can teach this, he can say कि यार हफ्ते में एक दिन लिफ्ट मत इस्तेमाल किया करो. What was शास्त्री व्रत? Anybody knows? इंडिया में जब फूड ग्रेन की शॉर्टेज हुई, तो लाल बहादुर शास्त्री जी ने कहा, all those who can afford, अगर वो एक टाइम ना खाएं या एक दिन साल में ना खाएं, हफ्ते में एक दिन ना खाएं, तो इतना सरप्लस हो जाएगा फूड ग्रेन. ओके, दैट वाज इंडियाज वे, जो हमारी ट्रेडिशनल थिंकिंग रही है. और बहुत सारे एरियाज में, टिल आई ग्रू अप इन 2090, आई यूज्ड टू फाइंड पीपल स्टिल कीपिंग शास्त्री व्रत. That's the way India has been trying to address things internally. So why I am shying away from religion? If it does so many things in my life.
Yes.
मेरे घर में आप जो है मीट काट के दिखा दो. Not possible. That means religion is regulating my lifestyle. It just needs to be a little tweaked. And tweaking has to be done by us through those religious.
We can write one Purana now. about use of water and circulate everybody on WhatsApp.
तो
सही बता रहा हूँ. जिस दिन हमारे रिलीजन वाले इसमें आ जाएगा ना कि यार ये गलत हो रहा है, things will start falling in place. Bhutan does that.
Thank you for a very interesting point. The final 2 points I just want to make. First of all, finance is going to be very important. Low-cost finance and carbon pricing, a very important part of the strategy towards moving. It is a big challenge for India actually. And the last point I want to make is, we have heard a lot about the co-benefits framework, and forever we have been hearing. Now, because we have also written papers about co-benefits. Now we have been reflecting on it. 20 years of this framework, I don't think it has managed to achieve a lot on ground. It is a narrative that everybody loves.
Have you discussed it with Gaurav Dubash?
And I have not, but he knows. I have also said this on many platforms, many stage, and people know about this thinking. At least on our side, it's evolving. That it's a framework that is loved by everybody. It has not managed to change much. We need this retweaking to have this, economic transformation framing. I think more than the co-benefits framing, it is the economic transformation framing that will push people and push many of the actors to actually start taking these changes. Because otherwise it is like there is a climate environmental debate and there is a co-benefit. No progress happens. So we have to change the framing. As I said in the initial slide also, it is an economic transformation debate. We have to take it front center, not say that it is because of co-benefit we should do this and that. It is because of economic transformation. That is what this entails. And this is the framing I think we should be adopting, and we are pushing from our side that look beyond co-benefits as an economic transformation framing that will help us achieve a lot more and much faster with a lot more gains for the economy. Thank you for inviting me again.
Thank you so much. Question.
Interactive mode पे कर दो.
Yes, I think we have been very interactive till now also, which is great.
नहीं, वो उनको जो लोग VC हैं.
Okay, yes.
नहीं, एक छोटा सा चीज मैं पूछना चाहता हूँ, ये पॉलिसी फ्रेमवर्क ड्रिवन है पूरा या ये इकोनॉमिक एजेंट्स वर्क करेंगे? क्योंकि अगर पॉलिसी फ्रेमवर्क ड्रिवन है तो फिर देयर माइट बी अ डिकॉटमेंट between how the economic agents work and how the policy is being driven from the top. So, what is your take on that?
So I think policy framework, the objective of policy framework is to tweak the behavior of economic agents. That is the objective. So let's say जो हमने renewable का FIT लगाई, FIT का पर्पज ये है कि जो इन्वेस्टर्स हैं जो रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी के, उनको इंसेंटिव मिले, वो स्टार्ट मूविंग इन दैट डायरेक्शन. So the whole anything that we do in terms of policy intervention, the idea is that it changes the behavior of investors that are making decisions. So
माइक म्यूट कर दीजिए.
माइक म्यूट कर दीजिए प्लीज.
चलिए पूछिए, कोई अगर ऑनलाइन ना कोई पूछना चाहे, कोई कमेंट.
our guests who have joined online, do you have any questions? You can raise. ये देख लीजिए पार्टिसिपेंट में रेज हैंड करेंगे कोई.
बिग स्क्रीन पे आ जाएगा.
Yes. Anybody who wants to ask any questions?
I think from Bilaspur, Tuticorin, other places we can see people on the.
Yes.
Sir.
Yeah. Please speak a little loudly. Yeah.
Ma'am, my question is, आपने जो बताया 2040 पे जो पीक करने वाली बात हुई थी, तो पॉल्यूशन जो लेवल होगा वो भी तो इंक्रीज होगा पैरेलली, और जो टेक्नोलॉजी की बात हो रही थी, हमारे पास अभी भी हम 22% का भी जो इफिशिएंसी है वो नहीं है. तो उस पे अगर पॉल्यूशन बढ़ता है और पैरेलली अगर हमारा पर डिग्री सेल्सियस भी बढ़ता जा रहा है ग्लोबल टेम्परेचर लेवल राइज, तो इसको कैसे हम आगे कैटर करेंगे 2040 तक हमारा पॉल्यूशन भी रहे और हम सोलार को इतना ज्यादा इम्प्लीमेंट कर पाए, और जो पॉल्यूशन वगैरह वो सारा कुछ ओवरऑल इसको एक बार थोड़ा बताया.
ओके, और
we'll collect the questions.
एक ही साथ कलेक्ट कर लेंगे क्वेश्चन. थैंक यू GMCSR MCL, whoever is kindly introduce yourself so we know you're from where. I can just see GMCSR MCL. Yeah, that's okay. Got your question.
My name is Nikhar. Okay, my name is Nikhar Kumar Kedia. I'm from Sambalpur only.
Okay, please mute your mic.
Next.
You can mute your mic now.
रिस्पॉन्स इकट्ठा करेंगे, 2-3 सवालों को इकट्ठा करके.
और पूछिए. SCCL, CCL कहता है कि हम भी बैठे रहते हैं, हमारे को एम्प्टी चेयर दिखाई दे रही है.
नदन कोलफील्ड.
गुड आफ्टरनून सर, दिस इज आलोक फ्रॉम CCL.
आप बोलिए.
Yes sir, IEA recently published a report which said that even though in the energy matrix the contribution of coal will go down from 50% plus to 34% by 2040, the total demand of coal from the present level will increase by 31% till 2040. I have basically 3 points to make, sir. How coal and climate change mitigation can coexist. First is the adoption of HELE plants, high efficiency, low emission plants. A study by World Bank suggested that adoption of this, namely advanced ultra supercritical plants, will reduce GHG emission by 20%. The second point I have to make, which Dr. Chaturvedi also touched, was large scale adoption of carbon capture and sequestration. We already have 2 plants in the world, namely Boundary Dam project in Canada and Petra Nova in US, which were a partial success. CO2 produced in Petra Nova was being used for enhanced oil recovery. Though it failed, it was a partial success. One major reason for its failure was that the oil in 2019, its price went down below $60 per barrel. Now when we have oil prices at $120 per barrel, we can try this CCS technology on Petra Nova model in Mundra plant of Gujarat, where we have oil fields and which are now stagnating. The CO2 produced from Mundra field can be used for enhanced oil recovery in Gujarat. Similarly, from Maharashtra power plants, the CO2 tapped can be used for enhanced oil recovery in Bombay High. The third point I have to make is regarding coal gasification. We already have a very ambitious plan to gasify almost 100 million tons of coal by 2030.
And now your last
By
question.
adopting these three things, coal and climate change can coexist. Climate change impact of coal will be mitigated to a large extent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alok. I think the gist of your question is, please make your questions brief. The gist of your question is, can coal and climate coexist? Right?
Yeah.
The gist of your question. Okay,
Yes,
so
yes,
please
yes,
make your
yes.
questions very brief. Thank you, CCL. Anybody else who has any questions? We can take just one more because we are running short of time here. We can take just one more. CCL, you can mute yourself. Okay, I think these two questions you can just...
Okay, sure.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions. Well, first question was about air pollution. And I mean, air pollution is very different from the climate debate. In the sense, we already have technologies that all the coal power plants need to install. It is just that probably these are expensive. And I think the ministry will be in a much better position to say why NTPC and all are not installing, not able to install these, because maybe these are very expensive. But that plan is already underway. In the sense that that notification is already there and the direction has been given. It is just that somehow every 2 years we ask for an extension for another 2 years. That's what has been happening on these technologies front, on the air pollution. So it's an important question, but it is somewhat different from climate. On the second question about climate and coal, is it compatible? I think that's a very interesting question. I think long term they are not compatible. And it is not just about coal, any fossil is not really compatible unless you have CCS coming in a big way. Carbon capture and storage does make it somewhat possible, but otherwise it's very difficult to have these coming in, coal and climate change going together in absence of CCS. Very, very difficult. So yes, so that is a broad question, but yes, in the near term we are still seeing, because the developmental needs of the economy are most important. And that's why we do see some increase in coal capacity. As the IEA report also you have cited, in the next 15 years, 20 years, we do see some increase in generation, some increasing demand in coal. So that is also going to lead to emissions. But as an economy, we are saying, well, because development is more important, we are willing to take on some more emissions for development, right? But beyond it, in the long term, it has to go out. That is also very clear. Beyond 30, 40, 45, that period, it has to start coming down. And it is not going to be compatible forever. For some 20 years, it might be, let's say, possible. But after that, it is not going to be possible. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I think, sir, out to koi questions hai nahi? So you can just wind up.
धन्यवाद कर दें.
Yes.
एक चीज था, बेसिक ऑब्जेक्टिव हमारा है कि क्लाइमेट चेंज के टेम्परेचर को कम रखें 1.5 डिग्री से।
जी।
हमने तो नेट जीरो कर लिया, अभी 500 बिलियन टन का बजट मेरे पास बचा हुआ है। तो ये मॉडल किया गया है कि कार्बन नेट जीरो पहुंचने तक कितना बिलियन टन ऑलरेडी हम पंप कर चुके होंगे और टेम्परेचर ऑलरेडी 2.5 डिग्री बढ़ चुका होगा।
जी बिल्कुल। सो जो रिपोर्ट्स ऑफ द क्यूमुलेटिव एमिशंस भी, ये सब एनालिसिस का आउटकम क्यूमुलेटिव एमिशंस भी होता है। और आई थिंक इफ आई रिकॉल करेक्टली, आई थिंक इट वाज अराउंड 65 to 70 गीगा टन्स ऑफ CO2 क्यूमुलेटिव। तो इंडिया का इम्पैक्ट बहुत कम है। हम लोगों का प्रोग्रेस बहुत फास्ट होने वाला है इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ में भी और टेक्नोलॉजी डेवलपमेंट में, बिकॉज ये टेक्नोलॉजी वर्ल्ड ओवर डेवलप हो रही है। तो जो क्यूमुलेटिव एमिशन जिसको हम कहते हैं हिस्टोरिकल एंड फ्यूचर, इंडिया का इम्पैक्ट बहुत लिमिटेड होने वाला है। हम लोग ना वो ग्राफ्स तैयार किए जो मिनिस्ट्रीज में हमने सर्कुलेट भी किए थे। आप अगर उन ग्राफ्स को देखेंगे जिसमें चाइना का इम्पैक्ट हो रहा है, फ्यूचर का, हिस्टोरिकल भी नहीं, फ्यूचर का चाइना का इम्पैक्ट देखेंगे, यूरोप का देखेंगे, यूएस का देखेंगे, इंडिया उसमें भी बहुत कम है, even after a 2070 net zero. So
the carbon intensity of the economic growth will be low compared
much
to
lower.
what West had historically.
Exactly. It will be much lower. Exactly.
सफर तो सब करेंगे हम, चाहे यूरोप कार्बन निकाले या अमेरिका निकाले, लेकिन तो पूरा प्लैनेट है।
बिल्कुल। So that is why equity is a very important part of the debate. And just because everybody is saying 2050, it does not mean India should say 2050.
तो equity के बारे में बहुत अच्छा भी मैंने एक सेंटेंस पढ़ा था।
जी।
Equity can bridge gaps, but not voids.
Yeah.
What we are dealing with is void.
Yes. नहीं, वो बात बिल्कुल सही है, but these are very difficult trade-offs to make. That's how I'll put it. There is no right answer to it because we want to achieve climate neutrality, at the same time we want to achieve development, And these are, I mean, there's no easy answer to these questions. That's how we'll probably end saying. But hope the discussion was good, and thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Rajneesh.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Chaturvedi. I think he was also enlightened by the crackling discussions from the practitioners, this side of the fence and that side of the fence, and how some of the policy issues which you have in the academics, and we have a different view on that. So it is always a very fruitful discussion that we need to have both perspectives to be kept in mind, and the analytics and all to be tampered with what is actually happening on the ground. Thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you so much.
Thank you.